Well, I'm very pleased to be here today with Heather Cornelius, who is a new artist for us at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts. She'll be showing as part of our third annual Fresh Talent exhibition. My name is Deborah Rosinski, and this year we have Richard Notkin as the guest juror who chose the work for the show. So Heather, welcome. Thank you so much for submitting, and your works are really impressive and skillful and large and they have a lot of story elements involved. And I'd love to learn more about what inspired you to create this series of three pieces that we'll be showing.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here doing this and having my work in the gallery. I'm really excited about it. Yeah, I do tend to work large scale. I do work on pretty much all scales, but for my figurative work, I enjoy building larger sculptures. I went to PLU and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in three-dimensional studies, and of course emphasizing in ceramics back in 2007. And then 2008, I took a workshop in Helena, Montana at the Archie Bray Foundation with Beth Stitcher and Tip Toland. They were co-teaching a workshop, and I had been already a huge fan of Tip's and then of Beth's as well. Um, and so I thought I had to go do it. So it was a couple week long workshop and basically learned both of their constructive methods, which were very different from what I had started with when I was already building large scale. And so I kind of took information from both artists and applied it to my practice in different ways and kept some of my original practices in place. And but yeah, they're solid constructed. The figures are solid constructed, so those heads and the busts and things like that, and build them on a steel pipe armature and pack clay on solid. So the armature becomes almost like the measurements of like the skeleton. So from the collarbone to the bottom of the sternum would probably be a measurement that I would apply if I'm doing a bust, something like that. Same thing with like all the measurements of the head and width of the shoulders. And so I kind of rough it in with those measurements and then pack clay on, sculpt everything. And then everything gets cut up and cored out into pieces. And then meticulously put back together and resculpted in those seam areas and then fired. Some of them are so big that I have to take the kiln apart, build them inside the kiln, and then build the kiln back around the sculpture. So it gets kind of crazy in my little studio
Wow.
sometimes. But yeah, I love it. It's really fun. The particular pieces that are involved in this show are from an exhibition that I put together based on their elemental creatures, I guess. So based on the elements, there's air and water, fire, earth kind of thing, which we only have about half of that involved in this, but in this show. But yeah, that was kind of basically a dive into me creating my own mythology. And what those kind of stories represent to me, that stories throughout history, in different cultures, like the water element. There's so many different stories that are based on these kind of mythical elements and creatures that were derived from the elements. And so that's kind of where I've started writing my own story visually.
Yeah, you mentioned Paracelsus, if that's how you pronounce his name, who spoke and wrote about four classical elements. So would Undine be water?
Yeah,
Guardians, is that more?
they're a derivative of the air pieces. So that's kind of where my idea to elevate these sort of I mean, obviously, I can't have them magically floating. I guess I could have suspended them, but that's a lot harder to install.
Right.
So my solution became to use alternative materials, the cement and steel,
Mm,
to sort of give the appearance of those sort of suspended in air.
the reality factor gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, we have things we have to sort of work around when we're building, for sure, especially three-dimensionally.
Right. And then Airy Smirk, where did that name come from? What?
So that's from another series that I was doing of kind of zodiac representations, more so having personal relationships with different people of that sign. And yeah, so I was inspired to do that piece, and I did a couple in the series. I haven't done the full zodiac yet, but I plan to
Hmm.
eventually in time.
Of-
But yeah, so that was from a separate series of work,
hmm.
the zodiac signs.
How were you working before the workshop that you mentioned? Were you like coiling and
I was doing a lot of thrown and altered and coil pinch
hmm,
combinations. What made that change for me? So there's two different ways that sort of thinking about it when you're building. As you're thinking about the construction of the piece, you're also trying to at the same time think about proportion, and you're limited to the forms that you're throwing or coiling or pinching. Whereas when I'm just sculpting solid, I'm roughing all the clay in quickly, I'm sculpting the whole thing at once, and then I separate the engineering of the piece
hmm.
after that.
Is it
And so it seems to some people like it's somewhat of a redundant process. But what it does for me is it just helps separate the engineering side versus the creative sculpting side, instead of trying to do them both at the same time, which I had some success with in the past. But I feel like I can really get what I'm visualizing so much better when I separate them.
hmm, kind of frees you up to be more
Yeah.
intuitive?
So like the Undine, the base of her is coil and slab built,
Mm,
but the bust itself is solid construction. So I still use elements of building other methods than what I learned when I went to Archie Bray.
mm. How many pieces did you have to cut Undine's head into to
Oh,
full
so that's a
construction?
great question, because it is a little like at that point it is very nerve-wracking to just feel like you're just destroying the thing that you just made.
Right.
Um, but I'll cut around sort of just behind the hairline,
Mm,
and then just behind the ears, and then underneath the occipital crest on the back of the skull. And that sort of comes off like a cap. So I sort of have this bowl
mm,
to start with. And the at that point the pipe is exposed, initial exposure of that top of the pipe. So that part comes off, set it aside, and I have large pieces of about 4-inch thick foam that I lay these onto, because if you have ever worked with wet clay, if you set it on a flat surface, whatever the clay comes in contact with, it takes on the shape of whatever it's in contact with. And so I've come up with different methods, from building hammocks to suspend things without touching. But I've ended up with this fairly dense, about 4-inch thick foam that is about the size, just smaller than a twin size mattress, that I cut everything up and set them on. And then I sort of dive down into the head once that cap is off, until I can get my pliers on that first piece of pipe, and I start to deconstruct the pipe. And then it gets cut underneath here. So you have this whole face and part of the neck section that comes off,
mm,
and then sort of take a little bit more pipe off and then go down into the neck. Then the shoulders get cut off, and I sort of go in through the sides of those shoulder openings and down through the neck to hollow out the upper torso part of it. And for larger pieces, I would then make another cut just underneath the breast and so on.
Yeah, it's an amazing amount of kind of engineering involved to make it
Yeah, even
work
just the
out
structure
there.
that she sits in, because it's two separate pieces. So
Mhm.
building that base, I built the base simultaneously as building the the bust. In my studio, I had them both going at the same time. So when one part was like, okay, this is a stopping point here, I need the clay to set up a little more, or whatever it may be, I could move over and work on the coiling and the slabbing of the base. And so when I sort of got them both to a point where they're ready to go together, I was able to stick the bust on top and sort of trace the contour of the bottom of the bust to make that opening, and then build an interior structure on the inside of the base to basically suspend her there so she doesn't just fall in.
Mhm.
Um, so quite a lot of engineering going on, and a lot of uh, drawing, but it's all building it in my head before I build it in person.
Mhm. And I imagine you would have to have it all going at the same time because of the way the clay shrinks as well. You'd have to
Oh yeah,
fit them
yes.
together. How much does it shrink? It's like 20.
It's anywhere from, well, different clay bodies shrink differently. This clay that I use actually shrinks quite a lot. So, but typically it's 12 to 15% of
Mm-hmm.
this original size that you make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always disappointing for my students.
Right.
What? This isn't mine. It's way smaller. They get it out of the kiln. So,
Where do you teach?
so I am the instructional technician at Green River College.
Hmm.
And then I also lecture for the Museum of Glass
Oh,
part-time. So
great.
I'm full-time at the college and then part-time with the museum, which I've been here at the college for, actually, this is my 11th year. And then I think it's my 15th year at the Museum of Glass.
Mm.
And so I do lectured on glass blowing technique and visiting artists, the concept of their work. And so I don't know if you've ever been there before, but
Yeah, and I'm a glass artist myself, so I know a few of those guys, and I'm on the gas board with Ben.
oh, excellent.
Uh, so that's cool that you're
Yeah.
world too. It's an amazing place. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get myself away from it over the last 15 years. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I love it too. It's really exciting, and to be a part of that place as well, and
Mhm.
just be exposed to so many different artists from all over the world. It's been really eye-opening and life-changing to start there. It was really one of my first jobs just out of college.
Wow.
So, and I've kind of just kept it going, even though it's very minimal now. Like that relationship is still there and able to still stay connected.
I know the museum's really connected with Hilltop also, and we had
Yeah,
Hilltop
I
Artist Show here, which was really wonderful. I love that program too.
I actually really love that program too. So I typically do the third Thursdays that are free and open to the public, and that's when Hilltop is in our hot shop.
Oh, nice.
So I get to work with all of those people that are in there, Trenton Kyocho, tons of um, Doug Burgess, just a bunch of people that are involved in that. And I've also emceed for them a few times as well, when they have visiting artists coming in, and for their like fundraising nights and things like that, they do. And so, yeah, that being a Tacoma native, I I really am proud of that program in particular. I'm really happy to have the Museum of Glass for the last, what are we at, 22 years or something now? Don't
Mm.
quote me on that. I don't remember exactly, um, but yeah, that program has affected so many people's lives in the community, and produces artists that are capable of going out and getting production jobs or assistant jobs or interns, and or just really that medium, just like ceramics, it takes the time of doing it.
Hmm.
The more hours you can get in, the better off you are in the long run. I mean, it's constantly a learning experience. I
Yeah.
would say for the first, years. I mean, I'm never stopping learning. I'm still ceramics teaches me things all the time, and I that's what I love about teaching is that students do things that I wouldn't think to do sometimes, and I'm like, oh, we could, maybe use this in a controlled way. Maybe it started out as an accident, but something
Mm.
could come of that. And it really just kind of opens up the borders of what people think the material has on it and creates innovation.
Yeah, I love that about the process of making happy accidents
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all kinds of good things. It's great. But you don't actually blow glass as well, do you? Or
I do a little bit. I blow parts for things that I've made. I've had actually a residency at the Museum of Glass
no?
that was awarded to me. I had an exhibition through Tacoma Spaceworks, and it was a group exhibition, but I was voted for the People's Choice Award, which the prize for that was a residency. So I got a couple of days in the hot shop with my old friends. I
That's
mean, pretty
great.
much all of them have been there since the beginning, and so
Yeah.
we're like a little family,
Hmm.
work family. And so I was able to produce some work there. And so I do have glass work as well, a little
Hmm.
bit. And my work that I'm working on right now is combining glass elements into my ceramic sculptures.
Hmm.
And we'll see how that goes because it's like I shouldn't even say anything about it until something is in reality, but I have parts and things happening. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we'd love to see it whenever it's ready to show.
Yeah. Oh, I'll put it out there for sure. So
Well,
yeah, I think that's
obviously very talented and your work
oh,
has
thank
such
you.
a strong presence. So we're thrilled to be able to show it here. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon. At
Oh,
the
thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Deborah. That's
Thank
very
you,
nice to
Heather.
say.
Thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Stop in soon to see Fresh Talent 3, a wonderfully diverse group of art on view at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts until October 29th.